It is winning season at MyBookie. Use promo code Gators on a deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly to your MyBookie account. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. And Gators Breakdown is proud to partner with AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Gators for more. And Gators Breakdown is proud to partner with America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Gators and use code 50Gators for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me social media at GatorDave_SEC, at Gators Breakdown out there. And of course, right here on the Monday night, still excited. Couple days after Florida defeats Tennessee. And on this Monday night, I am joined by co-host Will Miles. Find him at readandreaction.com, on YouTube at Read Reaction, and at Will Miles SEC, where we were coming on or talking before we came on here about, hey, it just feels good. Feels good to get that win. Still a lot of smiling faces. And hey, look, we don't really have to move on. We got Charlotte this week, and if everything goes like it really should, I think we can enjoy it. Like, hey, we had to stew on that Utah loss for 2 weeks because of having to play McNeese. And I think we can. I think we can have some smiling faces after a big rivalry wins on Saturday night.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was always one of the fears here, right? Is that if this game was a loss, then we're gonna have to stew on it for 2 weeks. And I think it's only fair that since it's a win, you get to revel in it for 2 weeks. Obviously, the team can't really do that. They got to go out and actually, put the pads on, strap it up, and go win that game against Charlotte. But look, this is a recovery week. Any sort of injuries, stuff like that. Hopefully, Max Brown and Jack Miller and some of the other guys get some real time. A lot of the freshmen get out there in this game against Charlotte, and we get to see what those guys can do. But I mean, it's not like they're being shy about getting freshmen in there right now. I mean, we got Shaquille Jackson on the bomb there that sort of kept Tennessee in it there in the fourth quarter. But I mean, look, I think you and I both thought Tennessee was going to win that game. And then Florida came out and punched him in the mouth. And obviously you were there, and the swamp was going nuts. And, it was an unbelievable win for Florida, for Billy Napier. Nobody can say he's over against the rivals. Obviously, if he finishes up the season 0-3 against the remaining ones, people will still be squawking about it. But, it quiets it down, certainly. And all the things that we saw that were poor against Utah were really good against Tennessee. And I think maybe this teaches me a lesson from the standpoint of all the procedural things, all the lining up correctly, all the things that got screwed up in Utah were things that Tennessee screwed up in the swamp. And so maybe the lesson for me is not to walk off the cliff quite so quickly when there's a game like that. Because, I mean, it was just miserable watching that game against Utah. But as miserable as that was how much fun it was watching this one, right? Especially in that first half. So kudos to Napier. Kudos to Austin Armstrong. I thought he did a really nice job setting up the defense in this one. There's still some holes there, but I think he papered them over pretty well in this one. The team was clearly prepared. They knew what Tennessee and Joe Milton were trying to do. And there were times where they screwed some things up, but there were also times where they were right there. The third down where they had the double slants is one that jumps to mind, where I think it was Jordan Castell came right down and took it away before Milton even had an opportunity to look at the inside guy on the slant.
Has to go on the outside. And that is a true freshman with that recognition right there.
Well, there's a reason. Wasn't he like all SEC of the week, all SEC freshman of the week or something like that?
Part of it, but yeah, all SEC's freshman of the week this week. Well, let's see. SEC freshman of the week. Let me get it straight right there. But absolutely, I mean, it's we'll get into more of him later. But yeah, that was going to that particular play you're talking about. It was just for a true freshman to be in that position and have the recognition and know what to do on a big play. And that speaks to just how far a true freshman has come, how far this defense has come, and as you said, just how far this team has come in 2 weeks now. But yeah, well, that is something with college football. I mean, we saw it with our Gators 2 weeks ago in Utah. We saw it with Tennessee. teams don't get to practice as much as they used to back in the day with two-a-days and all the limitations coaching staffs have now and stuff. I mean, I'd like to go back and track it somehow, some way, or maybe somebody else has or whatever. Like, does home field advantage, especially early in the season, mean more now? I mean, with transfer portal and your roster changing so much, and you don't have these years of experience. And I think if you have an offensive line that you got to retool, or you're playing with backups like Florida was at Utah, and Tennessee was missing their center, and they had some other guys up front too that were missing, I believe. Or it's like I do wonder now with these crazy crowds that you get, especially in the swamp with 90,000 people going crazy, is maybe these early season road tests until you get some games underneath you, they might be something to really hold you back at the beginning of the season.
I mean, maybe a little bit. I think the interesting thing is just the extremes, right? I mean, Florida rushes for 13 yards against Utah and 183 against Tennessee. And in the first half especially was just blowing the Volunteers off the ball up front, right? I mean, the play that ETN hit, the huge touchdown run sort of answer Tennessee's opening drive. There's there's a pulling guard and a pulling tackle there, and both of them were eating on linebackers because there weren't any defensive linemen for them to run into.
It was a Guakin at center pulling.
Oh, was it? It was a Guakin.
And George.
Then George pulled too.
Yeah.
George is the one, like that's the one I noted in my post-game wrap-up where ETN really does a nice job of finding his pulling guard, tackle, center, whoever it is. And he sort of puts his hand on his back as he's going through the hole and then decides left or right based on what he sees. And the minute he does, he's off. Right, like that acceleration to top speed is really quick. He almost broke one on the opening drive too. That plotting 13 or 14 play drive was almost a 7-play drive because he almost took one of the house there. And honestly, like out of all the things that I think we learned in this one, like, you and I talked and I think it was our over-under episode where I was like, I think ETN's special. I think we saw it again, right? And that's not a knock at Montrell Johnson. It's not. And Montrell Johnson is an important part of this offense, and he needs to be a big part of the offense. But ETN is special. He had an opportunity for 2 or 3 house calls in this one. He only got one of them. But even then, you're talking 18, 22, 26 yards on those big chunk plays. And Florida only had 2 explosive plays in the entire game. They were both ETNs. One was on the drive where they ran out the clock, and then one was the touchdown run that got him back into the game. That dude's for real, and, I'm perfectly happy to see him with 21, 22 carries a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Will, so I got to ask you, I've got to figure out how I want to do it as well. How do you like your crow? Do we want it marinated for a little while? Do we want to deep fry it? I'll gladly take that, but I got to figure out how I want to eat it. I got to eat the crow.
Well, I mean, so it's so funny. I picked Florida to go 8-4 for the year, and I thought they were going to beat Utah and lose to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then they went out and they looked so awful against Utah that it was like, oh, I've revised everything. So again, I think that's sort of where the crow is being served is you don't overreact. And I should know that. I should know better. And I didn't. And, but that first one was so miserable.
So my point was for me, it wasn't even so much how Florida played versus Utah. That played into it. It was just a matchup, how bad that offensive line looked versus how good Tennessee's defensive line looked last year and so far this year. I just thought that one matchup, like I had it a 7-point game. I just thought that one matchup would be the difference. But as you said, it was Florida in the trenches on both sides, especially in the first half, that really, really just did this game in.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that I really took away from this one is I learned something about Austin Armstrong that I think is really important, because Armstrong is a guy who goes after it, or at least historically when he was at Southern Mississippi, just was always bringing guys from all over the place, doing crazy stuff up front to get pressure. And that left him exposed on the backside. And on the first drive, when Milton hits that one down the sideline, they had single high safety. 2, the defensive backs were out there, get picked. Really, it was an OPI, but whatever. They didn't call it, so it doesn't matter. Hit that pass. And then one-on-one on Jason Marshall on the outside, going single high safety again. No help from the safety, and they burned him 2 times. And from then on, almost everything was 2 deep safeties. And he basically said to his guys up front, it was 2 deep safeties, either 1 or 2 linebackers in the box. There were times they only had 5 guys in the box. And Armstrong made an adjustment. He said, I've seen this be successful in the Virginia game and even the Austin Peay game. This sort of defense keeps Milton under wraps. He can't go deep. They're going to run the ball. Like, you think about when they came out in the third quarter and Tennessee took like 6 minutes off the clock with their opening drive. A lot of the reason they took 6 minutes off the clock for that opening drive is because Florida was saying, we dare you to run the ball. Like, run the ball 6 yards a pop the whole way down the field. We'll hold you to a field goal, and we'll take the 6 or 7 minutes off the clock making you do that, because especially with the new clock rules,
there you go. Yep.
It completely changes the complexion when you're up 26-7. And so Armstrong made some adjustments, I thought, this game that I was dubious he would make. Like, I just thought his nature, he's been aggressive everywhere he's at. He talks about being aggressive. He's got an aggressive personality. And he said, you know what, we're going to win with our front four or lose with our front four. And then the front four got the job done, right? I mean, you had Banks on the interception where he forces Milton up in the pocket into Desmond Watson. You had Tyreek Sapp, who gets a sack. But if he hadn't gotten the sack, Human Meelan was there.
Yep.
Milton really uncomfortable just with the front four. The linebackers were able to drop into coverage, which was huge because all those little swing passes that go out to the outside to like Squirrel White that end up being 7-8 yard pickups were 2 or 3 yard pickups in this one. Then you'd get the false start because Tennessee looked like Florida against Utah, and all of a sudden it's 3rd and 12, right? And 3rd and 12 is hard for anybody to convert. And, you know, in the first half specifically, Florida converted every 3rd down, but Tennessee did not. Tennessee really struggled on 3rd down in the first half. They were much better on 3rd down in the second half, which is why this game got a little bit tighter. But, you know, look, I think Armstrong made the adjustments. He did not stick with his scheme. He decided to scheme specifically to the opponent. And I think that really bodes well for him and for Florida moving forward.
Yeah, really good stuff there to hold that Tennessee offense. Don't matter, no Hendon Hooker, whatever. Yeah, we know it won't be as good, but they were running the ball like crazy coming into this game. Florida's run defense, which, hey, has been a huge, huge question the last couple of years. And that adjustment in the offseason, adjustment in the game makes a huge difference for the Gators to get a victory 29-16 over Tennessee. So everybody, all right, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. A little bit later, we're getting into this. Will and I are excited about what happened Saturday night. So we're a little bit late and just getting to those reminders. Like, subscribe right here on YouTube if you haven't done so yet. Everybody, hey, gatorsbreakdown.com, the latest Scheming with Seth is up there where he takes a look at both sides of the ball and the wrinkles Florida put in to get that run game going. And to hold that Tennessee offense in check. Seth takes a look at both sides of the ball this time. And then, of course, all the updates from Billy Napier's press conference today as well is up there at gatorsbreakdown.com. And, of course, Gators Breakdown Plus as well. Everybody get those ad-free episodes. But also a giveaway this week. I got 2 tickets to the Charlotte game to give away. So join by Wednesday, and current members and new members of Gators Breakdown Plus will be eligible. I'll do the giveaway ends at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. I'll do the drawing Wednesday night for 2 tickets to the Charlotte game, courtesy of Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description to join. There, go have a fun time in the swamp Saturday night, hopefully, to the winner of that. So, all right, Will. So something I think a lot of our minds shifted to after Florida got the big win on Saturday was, all right, this is a big win. It's a big win over a rival, and let's not see what happened last year. Happened when Florida would get a big win. You get the big season opening win versus Utah, only to lose to Kentucky the next week, and get the win over Texas A&M and South Carolina, only to lose to Vanderbilt and FSU at the end of the year. And it was something we had talked about, all last season, in the offseason as well, is, when Florida hopefully would get a big win, whether that be Utah to open up this season or maybe Tennessee to early in the season as well, to hopefully build some momentum for this Gators team. And hey, you know what? Billy Napier also had a lot to say about that. It was on his mind as well. So, Will, it is something that I wasn't sure he was going to bring up or not about the momentum. I'm sure you'll listen to him right here. Certainly aware of what happened last year with that, but I was also watching that journey that they posted highlights of the big win, that documentary style, NFL film style highlights that Florida puts out every Monday after a game. And he's in the locker room talking to the team right after they beat Tennessee, and he's talking about the momentum and how the team last year could not do those things. Well, here he was today talking to the media about that as well.
That's what the University of Florida football can be. We need to do that more consistently, and certainly as a staff and as a team, we can do our part. So proud of the team. Ultimately, I think that was built little bit of a buildup of a 2-week response. Proud of the response, in particular from the players, and certainly the staff provided great leadership. And now you're presented with a new set of problems, right? So I think ultimately just met with a leadership group at 11. I think this is a challenge of principle-centered leadership. And I think ultimately, I think it's important that you don't react, and that you actually have something that you can stand on. I was proud of the players and the approach they took since the Utah game. Now we can use those same things to apply to success, right? So, reality is that you don't accomplish anything significant by staying in your comfort zone. I think we were uncomfortable for 2 weeks. We were frustrated. We were angry. We were embarrassed. That allowed us to have an edge and certainly affected the way we prepared for Tennessee and helped us play the way we played. So I think it's important that we keep that, right? We have discipline, right? And discipline ultimately is making yourself do things that you don't want to do, right? So our consistency is going to be key, okay? So set of issues that come with success. Last year's team couldn't handle momentum. We failed to capitalize several times throughout the season. So I think this group has the right approach, and I'm excited about, the work that we're going to do this week.
Well, I think he's right there. We get the loss to Utah. It's probably a little easier to get focused and want to play ticked off to for the rest of the world that we're out there. And as he also said, there was the edge and a new challenge for now for this Gators team is don't lose that edge. This is a new challenge now as everybody's patting you on the back and you get all the text messages of congrats. And I think Napier said he had 260 messages on his phone or something like that after the game. But look, everyone's talking about, Florida. Now it's up to the staff, up to the leaders of this team to get through again. And look, I came out of that Utah game wondering where the leadership was and not necessarily, where it was as in does Florida have any? It's just if they do it, we need to see it. Where are the leaders? Who is going to step up for Florida? And obviously they've had some people step up and, you don't get a win over Tennessee Saturday night if nobody steps up in that regard. So, handling momentum, of course, was a big issue last year and the challenge this team faces. And right now, Charlotte's coming up. Look, it's not about the opponent. Florida has to prove they can handle success. And even against an overmatched opponent this week, we'll know what that looks like. Go prove you can put another great performance together and go build some momentum with Kentucky coming up. Go build some confidence with Kentucky coming up. Watching that highlight video, it was just apparent to me. I was kind of surprised Napier already went to the point. Probably many of the fan base went of, all right, this is a big win. Let's build on it this time.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things there. One is that there were some things in this game that I think are repeatable. There are some things that probably are not, right? They're not going to be able to go 7 of 8 on third down in the first half every single game, which means you're going to have to be a little bit more explosive on offense. So there are things that need to be developed there. I think, we've said all offseason long that the front 7 and especially the front 4 needed to dominate, and they did dominate in that game. Can you take that next step forward and do that consistently over an entire game against an overmatched opponent? There are still things to do and still things to improve on, just even though you won this game and won this game pretty convincingly. And, look, Tennessee is a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I think I sort of thought they'd be in the top 25, but not the top 15 when the season ended. And, so that's good. You need wins over teams like that. But there are some tougher teams on the schedule coming up. And yeah, it's going to be how do you deal with it, right? They're probably going to be 3-1 coming off the Charlotte game. Now, look, Charlotte gave Maryland a scare a couple of weeks ago. And so, I think it was pretty close heading into this, either into halftime or even past halftime. But so this isn't the same thing as McNeese State. Charlotte's a little bit better team. Still should be an easy win for Florida, but is it going to be one of those 41-21 games where, it's close until the third quarter, or is it going to be one of those games where it's 35-0 after the first 5 minutes into the second quarter, and all of a sudden you can bring in all the backups and it's a complete laugh and everybody gets healthy? Because there's a few things here. You got Trey Wilson going down with the injury in this one. It doesn't sound like I think we all feared it was going to be a collarbone break and he was going to be out for a significant amount of time. Doesn't sound like that's the case, but certainly you don't want to have to rely on Wilson this week if you can give him a full week to recover. And then, I think obviously the kicking game and the punting game are places where this team really needs to focus, special teams specifically. And, we'll see if they're able to do that.
Yeah, it was Billy Napier did say in the press conference today as well that competition pretty much going to be open now at kicker. Wasn't putting it all on the Halleck. He did say the protection in front of him wasn't where it needed to be either, but I think we've seen enough now in 3 games that there is there needs to be a competition at kicker there, and we'll see what Trey Smack's able to do. But it does sound like an open competition this week and the game itself maybe this week coming up versus Charlotte there. But yeah, Will, and something else I wanted to go back to. You're saying things that it weren't perfect, but things I saw that I liked bouncing back from Utah to what we saw against Tennessee was getting in the red zone. Of course, scoring in the red zone, that was a big sore spot in the Utah game and something Florida took advantage of, especially in the second quarter of the Tennessee game. And, going and looking at quarterback and looking at Graham Mertz, the stats aren't going to, besides the completion percentage, aren't going to jump out and wow anybody right there. But with a running game, I think that style of play is going to be there. Now, will Florida have that run game each and every week? Now, that's something that remains to be seen, and we'll see where it goes from there. But if it is or anywhere close to that, I think the way Graham Mertz is playing can win Florida a lot of ball games. But it was the way in the red zone that I liked it, because I thought if Florida was going to be successful in the red zone again, it was going to have to be because the run game was there. But it was actually Graham Mertz completing passes to Ricky Pearsall, getting close to the goal line. Jonathan Odom, thank God he didn't fumble back to Tennessee right there on the goal line. And then the screen pass to Montrell Johnson, where he just had to stay in there at the latest time he possibly could, find Johnson on the screen, and he takes it to the end zone. So, it was I was surprised, while the downfield shots are still not there, and we're really waiting to see those if there can be a larger part of this offense when needed. But I think to make this offense click a lot better than it did versus Utah, the passing game needs to click in the red zone. And that's what we saw against Tennessee there, Will.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see that develop as things go. Obviously, we talked about after the Utah game that operational excellence was the value proposition that Billy Napier was bringing to Florida, and that we all expected him to bring to Florida. That's what was disappointing about that Utah game. I think we saw that operational excellence here against Tennessee, which was awesome to see. Now we need to see some expansion on that, right? So Graham Mertz right now, 4% of his completions are 20-plus yards past the line of scrimmage. At some point, they're going to have to take some deep shots to loosen some people up, right? 78% of his completions are within 10 air yards of the line of scrimmage, and 40% of his completions are behind the line of scrimmage. That works for a little bit. That brings the defense up. You can get done with that, or you can get away with that for a couple of games. But we even saw it in the Utah game. Once Florida got down, Utah was really crowding the line of scrimmage, and Florida didn't do anything to really back them up. Now, part of that was because they were making all sorts of mistakes in terms of lining up and false starts and things like that. But now that stuff seems to have been solved, okay, now how do we expand the offense? How do we get some guys involved? We've talked about, there was a lot of discussion about Aiden Mizell being able to be a real deep threat. Somebody's going to have to be that deep threat. Pearsall last year was a pretty decent deep threat on some of those slants coming across the middle for AR. Those things are going to be there. Mertz is going to have to start taking those sorts of things, because he's not going to complete 75% of his passes all year long. His highest completion percentage all year, or in any year at Wisconsin, was 61%. Even if he regresses back to 65%, that's going to be a significant drop off in his overall yards per completion, given how little, or yards per attempt, given how little he's actually going downfield. And then you start running into a quarterback who's really inefficient. Again, I think he did an awesome job converting third downs. I struggle to think that you're going to rely on that constantly. Florida's offense is going to have to get more explosive. Some of that is going to be the running game. Some of that's going to be making sure Etienne gets 20 carries. Some of that is going to be getting away from the zone blocking scheme, I think, specifically when Etienne's in the game, and giving him some opportunities with those pulling guards or pulling tackles. But a big part of it is going to be Graham Mertz is going to have to start going downfield a little bit more. That doesn't mean that he should have more in the Tennessee game. But I think we're going to see that in the Charlotte game, and we're going to see that moving forward. Now, the only question with that is can you keep him healthy that way, right? I mean, it's not like he was going downfield a ton in the Tennessee game, and he comes out of that game with, a broken finger and a broken finger on his non-throwing hand and a lacerated finger on his throwing hand.
I think that might be part of it too. Is just against Utah. It was maybe trying to take some deep shots, sacked 5 times. This game didn't get sacked 5 times, but as you said, still getting hit when he's dropping back. So maybe playing into some of the decision making and settling for some of the short passes, and the staff, Billy Napier, calling shorter passes just to get the ball out of his hands.
He threw a first down pass to Caleb Douglas in the second half that looked like it almost looked like a little kid who has to use both hands to throw the ball. Like, it wasn't quite like that, but it was not his normal throwing motion to get the ball out. And right after that was when he went to the sideline. He saw all the blood all over the towel and stuff like that. It definitely affected his ability to throw the ball in the second half. And I think Napier sort of hinted in his press conference, or said outright in his press conference, that he probably got a little bit too conservative there. But I think part of the reason he got conservative there is I'm not sure he was real confident the ball was going to go where Graham Mertz wanted it to go when he reared back and threw one. So I think he can sort of write off the second half in terms of going downfield. At the same time, there's no doubt. I mean, if you're going to look at the things they need to work on, I feel like the things they're going to work on against Charlotte are going to be their blitz packages, because they haven't really broken that out that much. And then the other thing I think they're going to work on is going downfield, regardless of whether it's Mertz, whether it's Max Brown, whether it's Jack Miller, whoever it is. I think they're really going to be working on opening things up, if nothing else, to put that on tape for the opponents who are coming up.
Yeah. Like you said, Aiden Mizell, maybe get Marcus Burke back involved too. We haven't seen much of him since the Utah game. Injuries, of course, coming into play a little bit at receiver too. But if you start looking at a couple players, I think you want to start seeing that part of the offense there. You'd probably start looking with those 2 guys at the receiver spot. So, all right, plenty more to get into as kind of keeping momentum up for the Gators heading into Charlotte and Kentucky in a couple of weeks. But, hey, I mean, we still got it going. We still got it going right here with MyBookie. Well, one guy who doesn't still have it going anymore, Aaron Rodgers, his season's officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, brand new cash out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit, would then cash out early. Place another bet or let it ride for a chance at a bigger payday at MyBookie. So join us for an entire season filled with daily odds boost, same game parlays, huge prize pool contests. And right now, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use promo code Gators on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's Gators to claim your own cash bonus right now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Gators Breakdown is proud to partner with AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. With 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients, AG1 is formulated to support whole body health, raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. I mean, everything AG1 does right here replaces your multivitamin, your probiotic, and more in just one simple daily scoop in that drinkable habit. It tastes pretty good. I was, kind of questioning it with the green look there, but it actually tastes pretty good there, AG1. So start my day with it right now and pairing it with exercise and diet and ready to tackle these busy days of football season with my focus at peak performance. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Gators. That's drinkag1.com/Gators to check it out. And Gators Breakdown is also proud to partner with America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh. HelloFresh. I've received them not long ago. It was a hit with the family, and look, working a full-time job is I need all the time. All the time I can getting all this time back is really important right now. So I know you guys are busy as well out there, and football season starting. And hey, just enjoy football a little bit. Don't spend so much time going to the grocery store and shopping for all your products right there. HelloFresh wants you to have it all. Free time, easy and fresh, tasty food. That's why they take care of the meal planning and deliver the ingredients right to your door, right there in that chilled, cool box there with all the ingredients right there, right at your door. So don't call for delivery. Think HelloFresh. Their fast and fresh recipes are ready in just 15 minutes or less. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Gators and use code 50Gators for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Gators, use code 50Gators for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. Get your time back with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Well, we've kind of teased it just a little bit, but as we're talking about momentum here, one reason momentum can continue to grow, man, I didn't see it. I didn't see it playing out like this, Will, but these true freshmen are showing out. And as you mentioned the name earlier there with Eugene Wilson and Trey Wilson, man, unfortunate. You could tell he was going to be a huge part of this game plan. 6 touches on the opening possession or early in the game there for Wilson. And Billy Napier did give us an update today. Did say Saturday night it didn't look as bad as originally we thought, and did confirm it again today on this Monday. Billy Napier did say, yeah, he's banged up, not long-term. Ultimately, the x-ray is normal. I think that it would take him a little bit of time to return. Now, it's going to be a pain tolerance deal. It was going to be determined. Could be this week, could be next week. We'll give you an update on Wednesday where we're officially at. Good thing here, big picture, I think we're going to get him back at some point. So, as I said, you got Tennessee coming into town, and obviously right away the true freshman is involved. We've seen the teases the first couple of games of the season. We've seen what we think the potential is there with Wilson, but seeing as much as he was involved in the first drive against Tennessee, it lets you know there's a lot of trust there about what he can do, what he brings to the table to help expand this offense and really also help the run game. I mean, the run game was helped by how Florida was getting him involved early in some of those sweet motion plays. Eager to get him back and eager to see just how much more expansive this offense can get because of the true freshman.
Yeah, well, I mean, Seth Varnador last week on Gators Breakdown, he was in my stead, and he talked about them using those end arounds or the little wide receiver screen passes where they come and motion across to keep the defense honest. And you could see it work both ways, right? It worked from the standpoint of that kept things honest for then Montrell Johnson and ETN to go up the middle. But the other thing that did then was once they established Johnson and ETN up the middle, then you had the play action and the throw out to Odom out on the outside where you were gaining 12 or 13 yards as well. So everything really works in tandem, right? Like the goal for this offense, one of the reasons why they have that jet motion or the orbit motion is to keep every defender honest and spread the field out as wide as they can. It's not like a spread offense, but the idea is that you've got somebody having to guard every area of the field, and having a guy like Trey Wilson out there allows you to do that because the defenses know that guy's fast. The defenses know that's a place where Florida wants to get the ball. And they also know that he's somebody that Florida thinks highly of and can probably take the ball to the house if they give him an opportunity to and give him enough of a running head start. Now, he hasn't quite been able to do that yet. Most of his plays have been like for 9, 10, 11 yards on those end arounds, but still an 11-yard gain, especially on first down, move the chains real quick, make things easy for your quarterback, and then opening things up for the running back, which is really where you want the game to go anyway, or the ball to go anyway, I think is a huge deal. So obviously he goes out. I don't think it's a coincidence that he goes out and then all of a sudden everything starts to focus in on ETN. They did run Pearsall on the jet sweep a couple of times. And so, that's going to be a staple of the offense. They understand that they're helping out their offensive line when they run that, and a ton of the action that they run from that comes from that, right? Again, you think about the play action, the throwback to Odom, but it's the same thing when they run that flood route over where they've got the 3 levels of throws. It's the same action, right? You got the guy coming over on the jet sweep, you fake it to him, you fake it to the running back, you run out on the bootleg, and all of a sudden now you've got 3 different levels to throw to. So everything that Billy Napier wants to do from his base offense runs from having that be a threat. And one of the things last year that you really saw is that Xavier Henderson was not really a threat in that role. And so having Eugene Wilson or Trey Wilson in that role now means there's a threat there. That threat is going to hold the linebackers. It's going to hold the safeties. And all of a sudden now ETN gets into that gap in the middle, and the safeties are a little bit wider and they come in a little bit faster. He's able to cut back and beat them and hit some big plays. So I think what you're going to see is that as Trey Wilson's in there's going to be some larger openings for ETN and Montrell Johnson, and you're going to see more big plays, which is exactly what this offense needs. So obviously having Wilson there is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, as Seth pointed out, before the season, on gatorsbreakdown.com saying, hey, since Florida doesn't have a running quarterback like Anthony Richardson, like Billy Napier had at Louisiana with Levi Lewis, that the backside doesn't have to be accounted for so much anymore. Well, now you start incorporating these, and as you said, these defenses now have to guard east-west a little bit more and have to think a little bit more. And really good adjustment so far early in the season there by Billy Napier to find that wrinkle to go ahead and put in the offense, and clearly was paying off in the first drive versus Tennessee. So, hey, let's keep it going right here, and talked about it earlier. We're going to keep on with these freshmen, talking about momentum, and Billy Napier was asked today about Jordan Castell and the game that he had as well. So what do you think about Jordan Castell and the way he played? I don't know if you saw on film, but what he did with Jakeem Jackson told him to keep his head up. Here's Billy Napier's thoughts on that.
Jordan is, you evaluate players, you recruit players, you get to know them their families. And look, Jordan was a 6'2", 200-pound kid that was playing corner that had, really good tape. There were questions about whether he was tough, could tackle. We felt like we had enough evidence there. Love his family. His mom's an incredible lady. And then obviously his dad's story is really unique there. So this kid's been through some things. He's got some maturity. He's had to grow up. I think when I really knew I thought he could be special was when I went to his school, and then you see him in that environment. You see him interact with teachers and administrators. He was a leader, just a guy who had a lot of presence about him. So showed up in January and has been about his business, and ultimately he's playing well as a rookie for us. So great play on the deep ball. Most kids panic. They get a PI so that was impressive. And look, the guy's playing partly because he's mature enough to handle it. He can process, he can communicate, and he's got physical ability. But I think he is a future leader, and certainly amongst his classmates, he's well thought of. And obviously, Jakeem's out there playing as a rookie. That's his boy, right? So he's doing his best to encourage him. So those are good things. Those are healthy things.
Well, we got Castell making plays at the line of scrimmage. They move him up in the box. He's right there as another linebacker at times, it seems like. He's making tackles right at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage. He's playing physical. Billy Napier mentioned it right there. And he just had playing corner in high school. I mean, he's breaking passes up in the middle of the field, that play that you talked about earlier. He's making plays down the field that Billy Napier just mentioned, being able to play that ball in the air, in big-time atmosphere, only your third game of your college career, and you're making a big play like that down the field in a big game as well. So it's unreal that he stepped in, has already asserted himself as of one of the best players, if not the best player on the defense already, certainly back there in the secondary already as a true freshman. And the way he led Florida in tackles this past week, it's really, really going a long way for the true freshman. Now, I'm sure there'll be some more growing pains coming up as a true freshman, but he's making plays. He's showing leadership. I mean, that's what I saw it pointed out on Twitter yesterday, and then Billy Napier mentioned it and was asked about it today that he's showing leadership. He's picking up his teammate who just got beat by a touchdown there. He's making his presence felt on this team, and what a revelation! This early in the season, when you have when Billy Napier, Austin Armstrong, Corey Raymond being able to unearth a true freshman here who's made so much impact already in 3 games, and in a game where you absolutely needed it. When you're playing this offense that can score in bunches, you got a true freshman out there making some plays.
Well, look, I think Florida has really developed their young players over the last couple of years. You think about Shamar James and ETN were 2 of the top 4 recruits in the 2022 class. Jakeem Jackson was the number 2, and I think Castell was he was a little bit deeper down in the depth chart. But again, you're getting 2 or 3 freshmen who potentially, look, Castell is definitely going to be in the running for all SEC freshmen given the way he's been playing. Jackson has a couple of PBUs, so he's starting to really step up as well. Obviously,
hey,
Trey Wilson.
Before you go, I'm glad you brought that. I don't mean to interrupt you there, but Shamar James last year, and I know you brought his name up, but since you made the link to Castell maybe being all SEC safety this year, you're right. That would be 2 years in a row. Florida be putting all SEC freshmen on the field. If he keeps playing like this, he's going to be.
Yeah, well, and the critical part in that is that when you're an all-SEC freshman, that almost always is a stepping stone to eventually being an all-SEC player, and it takes about I think Bill Sykes did an article on Read Reaction. It takes like 8 or 9 all SEC players at one time to really have a team that has the opportunity to make the playoffs. Now look, Florida's not there yet, but Shamar James is going to be an all SEC linebacker this year if he stays healthy. I think Etienne's probably going to be an all SEC running back. Wilson may be all SEC at wide receiver or all purpose, depending upon what he's able to do in the punt game. And then you've got Jordan Castell, who may be a freshman all SEC as well. So they are building a foundation with the young guys who are coming in. I mean, if you look at Mullen's recruiting classes, you've got Jacob Copeland, Richard Garage, Emory Jones, and Justin Watkins were the first 4 in 2018. You got Chris Steele, Kyrie Elam, Chris Bogle, Tyron Hopper in 2019. Then Jervon Dexter, Wingo, Xavier Henderson, and Jahari Rogers were the top 4 in 2020. So just from that standpoint, Florida's already got more production from the two recruiting classes that Billy Napier's brought in than Dan Mullen got out of at least the top 4 guys in any of those. Now, to be fair, Kyle Pitts was the 5th guy in 2018, so Mullen got quite a bit of production out of him, though Pitts was somebody who'd already recruited or had already committed to McElwain before Mullen came in. My point is that we are getting a lot of contributions from the freshmen, but it's not just that they're on the field, right? They're not just taking up space. They are being important cogs. Like, if you told me Shamar James got hurt, like, I think I'd be apoplectic for like a week afterwards. Like, he is such an important part of what they're doing. There was a really cool play on Saturday where he knew what was coming from Tennessee before Tennessee went in motion. And he went in motion before the wide receiver went in motion. And then they threw the ball out to the wide receiver and he didn't make the tackle, but he got perfect leverage on the outside to force him back to the middle to all of his teammates. Shamar James has some instincts, and he's clearly studying film. And that dude is going to be an all-SEC linebacker this year. And, I think the same path is there for a guy like Jordan Castell. I don't know that he'll necessarily be an all-SEC safety this year, but that path exists. And the fact that they're finding these guys and the guys they're bringing in, there's been a lot of talk about recruiting and all that sort of stuff. And I still think they need to recruit better. At least, and I think the 2024 class is going to show that, because I think they're going to have some real studs there. But to pick up these guys who are major contributors for when that 2024 class comes in and hits is going to be a big deal for this team, and is a big part of why Florida won that game yesterday. I mean, Florida does not win that game without Shamar James and Scooby Williams at linebacker. Florida does not win that game the other day without Jordan Castell at safety. Florida doesn't win that game without Etienne at running back, right? Like, so these freshmen are not just like, oh, they're out on the field and they're taking snaps. They're out on the field and being major contributors to what the team is doing. And that's a testament to Billy Napier. It's a testament to his evaluation. And it's a testament to these guys, like you mentioned, Castell coming in as a true freshman and taking on leadership expectations and capabilities coming in as a true freshman. You don't see that everywhere, right? A lot of juniors and seniors go, we're not going to listen to that guy. And so kudos to the guys who are older on the roster who have decided they're going to allow the freshmen to come in and contribute, not just from a play perspective, but from a leadership capacity as well.
Yeah, CV brings up a good point too. Collins, seriously, they may not be getting the headlines as a Castell is, but you see those guys, when they're out there, they're not out there as much, but when they are out there, they're contributing and playing as well. I mean, this defensive line, we already said it was deeper coming into the season, Will, and we're 3 games in and have already been able to point to they're even deeper than we thought they were because of Jamari Lyons emerging, getting more playing time. True freshman Collins and Searcy out there now, and McClellan in his second year as well. I mean, we knew they were going to be deeper, but because of freshmen as well, even deeper than what we thought. And hey, look, now it does Florida, and something I'll always go back to when freshmen are out there under Billy Napier is it doesn't, and kind of extending your point, it's not like he's forcing these guys out there. They're out there because they can contribute. They've earned it in practice. They've earned these reps. Then it's going to let you know that, okay, that these guys are going to go out there and contribute. And then there might be some fall off or whatever, but they're out there for a reason. They're out there because Billy Napier believes they can contribute, and that can go a long way. And hopefully, you talked about recruiting, Will. Hopefully that helps recruiting even more too. Hey, I'm going to go to Florida. Billy Napier's going to play me, and I'm going to play good. I'm going to play good as a true freshman. Hopefully that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, so Collins and Searcy and Lyons may not be making major plays, but they're not a major downgrade when you put them on the field, and that's a critical part at defensive line as well, right? Because we saw it last year with Javon Dexter. He'd be out there in the first half and he'd be playing great, and in the second half he was up to like 50 plays, and you're just like, oh, poor Javon Dexter having to sit out there for 60 plays in the Florida heat, in the swamp, and you could just tell he was gassed by the time the fourth quarter came around. And, these guys rotate in and allow some of these guys up front, guys like Tyreek Sepp, guys like Human Milan, guys like Chris McClellan and Desmond Watson to stay healthy, and not just stay healthy, but stay fresh all the way throughout the game. That way, when you get in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden you're not gassed, you've got fresh legs, right? And it's the same 5 offensive linemen typically against you. So if you're putting in, if you're rotating in 8, 9 defensive linemen, all of a sudden you got a fresh guy going against a guy who's tired, especially if you get a guy on the offensive line who's dinged, all of a sudden you're going to be able to win one-on-one battles. And so, I think a big part of setting up those one-on-one wins for guys like Sapp and for guys like Human Milan is having guys who can hold their own, like Searcy, like Collins, like Lyons when they go out there. So, yeah, very, very pleased with the defensive line, with the front 7 overall. If you think about it, when's the last time you can remember either Scooby Williams or Shamar James getting mauled by a guard?
Yeah,
like I can't remember them getting mauled by a guard. Not even in the Utah game. I don't remember them getting mauled the same way Florida has gotten mauled at linebacker for the past few years. And so those guys up front are doing their job, keeping the offensive linemen off of the linebackers, allowing them to go side to side and make plays, and that's going to bode well for the rest of the season.
What did you just say, Will? We had a defensive lineman doing their job. Hey, one got recognized for it this week. Cam Jackson, co-defensive lineman of the week right here in the SEC as well. That was announced today, anchoring this defensive line, of course. And we were just waiting for that breakout game from him, and it happened at the best time when Florida's back is against the wall. Cam Jackson makes his presence felt versus Tennessee. Tennessee coming in, running the ball, one of the best rushing attacks early on in this season. They couldn't get it going. Jackson helped lead the defense up front, holding Tennessee to 100 yards on 30 attempts. Jalen Wright comes into this game averaging 9.3 yards a carry for Tennessee, have 3.9 on the night. Jackson was disruptive, made his presence felt, and as you said, Will, just kind of goes along. That's one more name we can count on. It's a new face, not a freshman like we've just been talking about, but a new face on this Gators defense, and going a long way there. And congrats to him for being recognized for co-defensive lineman in the week of the SEC.
Yeah, the other guy we haven't mentioned is Caleb Banks, who probably caused the most important play of the game.
Good point.
Right? The turnover, Banks just blew by the guard, absolutely abused him, and then forced Milton. Well, one, he got held, and then forced Milton, I mean, usually the holding, you're like sort of watching, you're like, oh, that probably should be a flag, but I can understand if they pick it up. Nah, the one with Banks, you're just like, oh my God. Like everybody should have seen that live. And then he forces Milton to step up, and then Desmond just killed him. But that interception doesn't happen if Banks doesn't have immediate get off at the snap, doesn't beat the guard, doesn't just then plow the guard into Milton while getting held and force that entire play. I mean, the hold or the sack would have been awesome, but the fact that it turned into more than that is significant, right? I mean, and
it's funny how it played out. Because if he gets to the quarterback, Milton probably just takes the sack and doesn't even throw the ball. But since there was that little bit of delay, he thought he had time to throw. And as you said, Watson eats a sandwich right there with him, and ball gets floated up in the air for a pick. But it's funny how things work out sometimes.
Well, easiest interception Devin Moore's ever going to have. But, look, I think all offseason long we talked about where do turnovers come from. And turnovers come from somebody getting pressure straight up the middle. Turnovers don't tend to come, at least not interceptions, don't tend to come from guys off the edge. And it's been a really long time since Florida's had somebody in the middle of the defense who could push that pocket, who could make a quarterback uncomfortable. And Banks was able to do it on that play along with Watson. But you think about Jackson, he was also able to do it in some capacity as well. Now, look, there's still time, there's still a path to go. There were times that Milton dropped back and had time and was comfortable. And it's not like this is an elite defensive line, but it's no longer a liability. And last week I was saying, I think you asked me what the game against McNeese sort of told us about Graham Mertz, and I said, I don't think he's the solution, but I don't think he's the problem. And I think in some ways that's the same thing I'd say about much of the defensive line. Is for years the defensive line has been a problem for Florida. And, maybe the last time it wasn't was when they had Grenard and Adam Schuler and Tadaro Slayton, and that was sort of their defensive line there. Now that we're past that point, the defensive line has been a problem for the last few years. Like, you can't just get countered to death against LSU if your defensive line is doing their job. And the fact that the linebackers are much cleaner than they have been the last couple of years, the fact that they're able to run to the ball and make plays, like Scooby Williams on that fourth down play didn't get touched. And the reason he didn't get touched is because the defensive line absolutely collapsed the Tennessee offensive line. And so guys like Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks and Desmond Watson aren't necessarily going to get the credit for that particular fourth down play. And Scooby Williams makes a great play hopping over the traffic and getting the guy in the backfield. At the same time, Williams didn't get touched. And the reason you don't get touched there when you're up by the line of scrimmage, when you're a linebacker like that, is because the defensive line's occupying two guys apiece, and the offensive line just can't get off and can't get to the linebackers. So kudos to the defensive line. I thought when it counted, they did their job. I still think there are times that it's average at best, but average is like leaps and bounds above where the defensive line has been the last couple of years. So significant for the Gators.
All right, talking about new faces. And young guys and new faces. We're going to see it some more this week too. Because of a late timeout by Josh Heupel, we get a little scuffle. And the SEC announced today that offensive lineman Damian George, offensive lineman Micah Mazuka, and tight end Dante Zanders of Florida will be suspended for the first half of the game versus Charlotte on Saturday. So, with those guys on the sideline for the first half, we will probably see more one of Arlis Boardingham, who was in the game early versus Tennessee, and Najee Harris, true freshman along the offensive line, and then Lindell Hudson, of course, the transfer there at right tackle. He should be getting some more playing time as well. So young guys in Boardingham, who is his second year, but his first playing time this year. Harris, a true freshman, Hudson, a transfer. Some new faces, good to go. Look, this is probably a good thing anyway, because young guys are going to get some reps here. And inexperienced guys with Hudson, and of course, he needs the reps now to kind of catch back up from missing some time in the fall and the concussion that he was dealing with. But there we go. So we'll see some new faces there for Charlotte.
So did the SEC suspend Heupel for being the instigator? Like they should have. So I'm sure they have a couple of guys who are on the shelf for the first half this next week too. But,
one guy for Tennessee was
the guy who got punched in the face by Mazuka.
Probably so. I forget his name, but
Haddon, yes. I think might have been his name, but
it was not Haddon. I do know that.
All right. Well, so it was a good time.
I'll find it while you pull in here.
It was a good time for Florida to have a fight, I suppose, given who the opponent is this week. I'm actually a little bit surprised. It was only a half game for some of those guys. I figured Mazuka was a definitive full game. When you get into a full boxing stance, take a couple of shuffles and throw a punch. Usually that's kind of when they say, all right, that's enough. I guess they figure it's less important than targeting because, that's what I just kind of expected them to put targeting penalties in there. So good, right? We'll get a bunch of guys experience in the first half, some experience for when somebody goes down. That'll be good. Obviously, I think we'll see, we'll probably see Najee Harris. We'll probably see some of Lindell Hudson. There'll be some opportunities for some guys to maybe come in and actually show what they can do with some of the starters. So that'll be good. But
Omar Norman Lott was the defensive lineman there for Tennessee.
Well, the good news is we burned him a couple of times because I remember writing that down. I remember writing that down in the ETN section of my article that he got burned on one of them. That it was on a jump cut where ETN sped up and Norman Lott just couldn't catch him. But this whole thing annoys me because Heupel calls that timeout at the end. Then his team comes in and hits Mertz late. And look, I get it. You can't box, but Heupel is the reason that happened.
Not the first time Mazuka lined up in that, by the way. You can just tell.
Yeah, I suspect that he's been in a fight or two in his life. But, I don't know, man. I look at it and I go, out of everything, And he apologized to Napier after the game when they're doing the handshake, and then gave sort of a squirrely answer when they asked him in the post-game conference. If nothing else, it sort of livened up the rivalry a little bit. I remember when Missouri and Drinkwitz and Mullen got into a little bit. Obviously, that livened things up a little bit as well. But the most enjoyable part of this entire weekend is Clay Travis.
Now I'm mad Graham Mertz didn't dress up as Darth Vader.
I was going to say the most enjoyable thing is whether you love him or hate him, go over and check out Clay Travis on Twitter and his timeline during the game because he's a Tennessee fan.
Yes.
Was it awesome?
Okay.
It was just awesome. He's sitting there like, well, we're 2 for 17 against Florida in the last 19.
I am I'm going to pull that up because I do not follow him. But
that is definitely worth the exploration because that was awesome. Best part of the night was going over there as he melted down because you can see on his timeline when Tennessee went down and scored the touchdown, and he was so confident that Tennessee was finally going to come into the swamp and win. And then as it went, he's just like getting more and more despondent. It probably looks a lot like when I live tweeted the Utah game, but it was awesome.
Of course, he works for Outkick, of course. But one thing, and I saw the chat talking about it. There was one Tennessee fan who was a streaker. Who ran on the field during the game he wanted to lift the Tennessee fan spirit, and I know he was asking for somebody to bail him out yesterday. I know that was floating around on Twitter a little bit, but
an effective Facebook post.
How do you have his phone? But okay, but okay, I got it pulled up. Yeah, so I'll be going looking at that. So yeah, good stuff. Big win over Tennessee. Hopefully, Gators built some momentum coming up. We won't really know. Like I said, we can tell a little bit by the performance versus Charlotte, but we're going to get our answer in a couple of weeks from Florida. Hopefully, plays better on the road with a noon game that was announced today. No, I cannot tell you. I need to go back and look it up. The last time Florida played at Kentucky, and it wasn't a night game. They love putting that game at night in Kentucky, but it will be a noon game. And most of the time, noon games on the road kind of scare you a little bit because Florida traditionally has not played well. But lately, we haven't played well at night in Kentucky either. So maybe this being a noon game kind of just gets it where it helps Florida a little bit more. And that Kentucky crowd won't be there all day and getting ramped up for that game. But before we go, I haven't really had a chance to catch back up with it. But, hey, we're talking about momentum, Will. Well, the Gators getting 2025 off, that recruiting class, and some momentum there on the recruiting trail for a 2025 running back, Waltez Clark at Plant High School in Tampa. And let me pull it up there. And look, committed to Gators on Saturday night. He chose Florida over the likes of Florida State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, USC, some more schools out there as well. If you go to the 24/7 Sports Composite, he's a 4-star. He's 128th overall, the 11th ranked running back. The on 3 has him as the 151st overall, 12th ranked running back. A 4-star right there on both services. Pretty good package of size and speed, 6'2", 198. As a sophomore, he carried the ball 87 times for 863 yards, 9.9 yards per carry. So basically a first down every time he touches the ball when he carries it. 18 touchdowns in that regard, as well as catching 27 passes for 512 yards, 4 more touchdowns. So far this season in 4 games, Clark has 13 carries, 64 yards, 4.9 yard average, 2 touchdowns, 8 catches, 110 yards, 13.8 average there, 2 more touchdowns you add to it. 9 total tackles on defense, according to Max Preps this year as well. Will, he plays all over the field. He'll play receiver. He'll play running back. On defense, he'll play edge. He'll play linebacker. He'll play in the backfield as well. They use him there at Tampa Plant there for Waltez Clark, and he is the listed as a running back where they see him at the next level. Gators get their first 2025 commit.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you were a running back and you watched that game, would you have any doubts that that's where you want to go? It's interesting because you look at Clark. He's pretty much rated about where ETN was. You think about Montrell Johnson coming over from Louisiana. I would say these guys pretty good at evaluating running backs. So I think we should be really, really excited. Obviously, the 24/7 ratings right around 94.5. So getting that 2025 class off to a really good start. And I think one of the things that's probably going to be overlooked or at least not thought of just because we're talking about momentum is it's not just about momentum winning this season and not going 3-9 like some of the people picked Florida to do this year. But part of it is building momentum on the recruiting trail. And one of the reasons why that second recruiting class is so critical is you haven't shown anything on the field yet, right? That no one's able to negatively recruit against you. Well, that changes. Now people can negatively recruit against you. And I'm sure there were some people who were sort of pointing at that Utah game going, look at that. It was rough. And, there were some things, especially with people like us with criticism, right? Obviously, do you want to put yourself in that sort of grind? But then you see the flip side of that, which is that everyone at Florida is so passionate about the program, and we saw it in the Swamp. Any player who was in there had an awesome time while they were in there, and the Swamp was a madhouse. And again, I look at Clark and I say, to see how Etienne was used, to see how Montrell Johnson was used, to even see Trayon Webb was in there for a couple of carries, the fact that freshmen play early, the fact that he's from Tampa, and so obviously keeping guys close to home, family can come and watch, all that sort of stuff. This is the kind of kid that Florida has allowed to leak out of the state for the past decade. Right. And so to secure him for 2025 real early on here, still in 2023, a big get for Florida. And certainly I think makes a lot of sense for Clark, given what he saw on the field.
6'2", 198. Man, I'm eager to see that.
Looking like C4, man.
There you go. That's where my mind was going to. That just big body style running back. So yeah. Hopefully, that's way down the road. Hopefully, keep him in the fold there. But man, 6'2", 198. That's I'm ready to see something like that. So hopefully Jabbar Jaluk got his guy right there, because that's. And it's kind of, you mentioned seeing ETN there on Saturday night, and I know Herb Street was mentioning it over and over again, saying, look how slippery he is and how low to the ground he is. That's why he's so hard, to basically paraphrasing there, why he's so hard to get a hold of and why he's hard to bring down to the ground. Pretty opposite here at 6'2", 198 there for Jeff Etienne.
Well, the other thing I would say is the reason Etienne's difficult to bring to the ground isn't because he's low to the ground. It's because he goes from 0 to 60 really fast. And the last time we saw that was a guy like Kadarius Toney, and Toney was violent in terms of the way he went from 0 to 60. He'd stick his knee in the ground. You're like, oh my God, is he going to snap that thing as he pivoted? Etienne doesn't do that. He has more traditional sort of moves for a running back. But what he does is he waits, and then when he decides to go full speed, it's full speed right away. And usually it takes normal players a step or two to get to full speed, and they get caught, right? They get tripped up by a linebacker, they get tripped up by a defensive lineman who's chasing them or something like that. Watch next time Etienne is getting the ball. If people aren't breaking through the line of scrimmage, tell me how many times he gets caught from the backside. Like, he very rarely gets caught from the backside, because by the time that backside defensive end is coming around to try to stop the run, he's already in the hole, because he's already at top speed. He's already put his foot in the ground and gone. I think that's something that's really underrated. His top speed may not necessarily be the same top speed as, CJ Spiller or somebody or Dalvin Cook or somebody like that. And that's still to be seen. I mean, he outran Tennessee's DBs the other night after he got behind him. But the thing that I think really separates him, you could see it on the jump cut. I have it. I think it was the last play in the breakdown that I have on ETN in my article. You can see it in the jump cut. He's got a guy from the defensive end position who's about to catch him right as he does the jump cut, and he puts his foot in the ground and goes and just completely separates from the defensive end the minute he decides to go. To me, that's the thing that separates ETN. And again, that'll be the question for Clark, is does he have that same skill? I'm guessing it's going to be a different skill set, because ETN, for two reasons. One is he's built differently, and the other reason is that ETN's special, right? I think that's something we need to acknowledge, is that 0 to 60 isn't something where you're just like, 17 backs in the nation can do that. It's like, nah, there's only a couple of people who have that ability, and thankfully Florida has one of them on the roster.
Good stuff. Yeah, 2025 class underway. We'll see what the big game atmosphere Saturday night does to hopefully finish off this 2024 class as well. Some good reports coming out of there, but of course, any happenings for that class, we'll be here to cover it on Gators Breakdown. But a lot of big visitors in the Swamp to see the beating of a rival once again in the Swamp. Tennessee I should have known better anyway to pick Tennessee in the Swamp. I mean, that was just the theme of yesterday's podcast was Dummy Dave, and I'll say it one more time: Dummy Dave picking Tennessee to win in the Swamp. I know better.
just picking Tennessee at all. 2-17 in the last 19
I
games.
know.
Like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing?
We
Like,
did
even
it.
if like, just think about it. Even if you're wrong, you could look back at 2-17
Exactly.
and just be like, I was picking the odds.
It's overthought that one.
I'd rather be wrong.
Yes.
Right. I'd rather be wrong, pick them to lose, and have them win than vice versa. Right. So, again, I think the team proved some stuff on Saturday, not just to us, but to themselves. And I think that's a really cool thing, and a cool experience. And I think Napier talked about it, that oftentimes you sort of need that kick in the teeth in order to understand what's necessary. But I think the thing that he maybe didn't say is that in order to enjoy the climb, right, that you have to have some of those experiences and some of those down experiences. That's what brings people together. You even saw that in Swamp Kings, right? That 2007 season was necessary for 2008. The 2005 season was necessary for 2006. And so I think what we're seeing are sort of those growing pains. I don't know whether this team's going to get to a championship level, but the growing pains that are necessary to be a very, very good football team start with getting kicked in the teeth and everybody buying in. And so this Tennessee game, I think, is at least an indication that things are heading in the right direction. We'll see whether that can continue, because I think we thought the same thing after the A&M win and the South Carolina win last year, and then all of a sudden they were getting kicked in the teeth again at the end of the year, and that'll be the trick, right? I mean, if they win the game against Charlotte and then go out and get demolished by Kentucky, we're going to have a very different feel. If they're rolling 6-1 into the cocktail party, well, all of a sudden now, not only is that Utah game the turning point, but I think it's also an indication that the team sort of needed that to rally around and really become who they were going to become.
Bouncing back, Will. Bounce back versus Utah. And even in the Tennessee game, bounce back. We got to remember that Florida was down 7-0. And Tennessee, boom, 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 down the field, able to bounce back, get the big ETN run, and it was just off to the races for the rest of the first half for the Gators to build up a big lead to carry them to the victory. So, yeah, teams learning some things. Hopefully this is another learning experience into building some momentum and carrying this, as Will said, down the season. Hopefully set up a big cocktail party right there in late October. So, all right, Will, anything else, man?
Nah, just this week, obviously Charlotte. So I've been waiting to put out my recruiting, mid-season recruiting wrap up. So that's what'll be coming out this week on Read and Reaction. There'll be a prediction for Charlotte at the end, but mainly talking recruiting. Let's keep the momentum going, man. We got the win against Tennessee. Recruiting news is good. Let's talk about it, and then get that win next Saturday and get ready for Kentucky.
Absolutely. One note, I don't know if people know if they've looked at Charlotte yet, but one former Gator quarterback, Jalen Jones, will be the starting quarterback for Charlotte. I had him on Gators Breakdown not long after he committed there, so to Florida. But there we go. One little angle to look at for this game, since there's not really that many storylines for this one. But a former Gator is the quarterback for Charlotte. So, all right, for Will Miles, you can find him at Will Miles SEC, a site read and reaction. I'm the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC, at Gators Breakdown. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining us on this episode of Gators Breakdown.